Okay, delighted to be with all of you here today, and I'm not sure who it was, if it was Dr. Vitelli or a prior moderator who mentioned about the comfort of the chair. And let me confirm, accurate, extremely comfortable. And so great that everyone is here, and hopefully you enjoyed the meal that was prepared, that Angel selected. Well done, Angel. Yes, lovely. Can't lose with bow tie pasta, Angel. That's just a rule right there. So appreciate that, and delighted to be joined on this panel by the congressman and the representative. And you can read their bios in the provided program for today's summit. What I'd like to do is just we of course are not being joined by our wonderful friend and colleague Congressman Gray. What I'd like to do is ask Representative Soria to just a few opening words, thoughts, and then Congressman, a few just opening welcome thoughts, words, and then we'll move into a series of questions that I think are pressing on the minds of most of us working in the space of higher ed. So with that, let me turn it over to the representative for just some opening remarks. Yeah, go ahead. It takes there's a little bit of a delay when you turn on the mic.
Oh, there we go. Good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to be here. Thank you, Chancellor, for kicking us off. And I do want to first and foremost thank Ben Duran for the invitation, to the entire Central Valley Higher Ed Consortium for the work that you guys continue to do, which is extremely critical. I think more than ever, it is important that we link up both our colleges, our high schools, our universities, because we are facing some trying times as we look at what's happening at the federal level, which ends up impacting us at the state level, what we can do in terms of investments for education, and then what you guys it trickles down to what you're all doing in our respective local communities. So I think that I'm really excited to be here with you today to really talk about what are some of the things that we can work on together. What are some of the out-the-box thinking that we also have to do to be able to maximize our resources and really meet the needs of the students that we represent here in the Central Valley. And so with that, I'm just going to say that I am proud to be homegrown from the Valley. I grew up in the city of Lindsay in Tulare County. Product of public schools. All my life, I had the opportunity to go to UC Berkeley and then UC Davis School of Law. First generation, parents were farm workers. Probably very similar story to the story of the students that we all serve today. I'm an English language learner, so resources for English language learners is always an issue that is a passion of mine. And so I draw on my experience and my personal experience as a first gen, as an English language learner, as a daughter of immigrants, and as a product of public schools, public universities, in the types of policies that I like to support in diving into the issues. And so I'm just super, super honored to be able to represent parts of the Central Valley in Sacramento and really give a unique lens to the challenges that exist here in our region. And sometimes they're different from the Bay Area and Southern California. And so I think that it is important that we make those distinctions, especially when policymakers are trying to do a one-size-fits-all. We know that that's always not a good thing for us. And so excited to have to be here and to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Representative Soria. And yes, of course. And Congressman Costa.
Thank you very much, Chancellor Muñoz. It's always good to be with you and working together on behalf of UC Merced. Go Bobcats, right? Got that medical science building going up and all the other good things you're doing with our university students there. And my colleague and friend, Assemblymember Soria, we appreciate all the work you do on our behalf in Sacramento during these trying times. The 2025 Central Valley Higher Education Consortium Summit is something that I have participated in the past, and this is important because each and every one of you are leaders. Each and every one of you have dedicated your life in one way or another to educating America's future. And It's one of the reasons I've always wanted to participate with you and to give you a legislative update on what's going on in Washington and the challenges we're facing there, because those challenges end up getting related to you in terms of the resources you might or might not have to do the work that we collaborate on, which is educating America's future. That's the whole purpose. And I was just with a group of interns at Fresno State this morning and told them how proud I was of their efforts to pursue their own education and how valuable I think these legislative internships are with all the universities that participate. Let me just quickly say that these are challenging times that we are living in, and each and every one of you know that. We are living, I believe, in a seminal moment in American and world history in so many different ways. And because all of you are engaged and participate, you follow what's going on at the federal level and know what I'm talking about. And this conversation that we're going to have right now is a very interesting dialogue when we talk about higher education between the roles of, not so much in this case, local government, but certainly in terms of our community college boards, in terms of our CSU system with our 3 state campuses, and the University of California, and the level of federal, state, and local funding that you derive to do your job. I would just tell you bottom line, with the efforts by this administration to basically eliminate the Department of Education, with the cutbacks in federal funding for student aid, with the impacts on the TRIO program, our efforts, my partner and friend for the full-fledged medical school are being impacted as a result of all of this. And Esmeralda and my friends, I was engaged with the governor earlier this week, are looking at the May 14th revise, and they're looking at basically on what we do with this reconciliation process on how much less funding they may have at the federal level. But this really, I think, goes to the heart of the challenges in higher education right now. And this is the conversation I hope that we'll have in terms of how we're going to carry out our efforts, our mission, by trying to do more with less. And I think that's the reality of the current situation we're dealing with.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you. In fact, you helped tee up the very first question. The Congressman and I were together last week in D.C. and saw each other at a wonderful presentation in the Library of Congress. And what do you, Congressman, what are you hearing? What are you seeing? We've heard earlier, obviously, the efforts dismantle Department of Education. Conservative estimates, we heard from John Farnsmith yesterday from ACE, anywhere between 330 to 370 billion in education-related reductions potentially. I mean, what do you, and you intimated about these severe cuts, many of which, in fact, programs that were mentioned earlier, MESA program, Puente program, TRIO program, Gear Up program. Many people are familiar with those kinds of programs. I mean, what's the negotiating process there? What do you see happening, and particularly anything that could affect Pell?
Well, I can give you estimates, and it will become clearer in the next 6 weeks to 2 months. They want to try to complete the budget process by the end of this month. I don't think that's going to happen, but it could well be completed by June, end of June. And as you're trying to put your own budgets together and the state's trying to do their work, they're in anticipation of what cuts that you noted are going to ultimately occur from federal funding. I will tell you that some of the conversations they're talking, for example, on the Pell Grant, could result of them being reduced by nearly $1,500 per student. That's significant for our students, whether they be at our Cal State University campuses or whether they be at UC Merced or the other UC campuses. And we're keeping our fingers crossed. There's another $1 billion that could be cut in school, high school mental health programs and grants. You know, the federal funding primarily, as all of you know, is in student assistance and then in grants that deal with research and efforts to advance our higher education system. And I was with one of your colleagues, UCSF President Sam on Tuesday, and we're all trying to figure out, how Doge and Elon Musk, who hasn't been elected to anything that I can determine, is using his chainsaw as he occurs. And I mean, there are certainly areas where you could do surgical cuts and it would make sense and it would provide some efficiencies. But this meat axe approach that they are pursuing, I think is going to really cut to the meat of the bone. Let me give you one that the Chancellor says. He thinks in 120 grants that UCSF receives, in which over that are being impacted, 120 grants just to the University of California, San Francisco, although they've rescinded 20 of them, that they have a program under DEI that has certain code words. And they match this program against all these grants that are going to universities and colleges throughout the country. And if a word is contained in that grant, they kick them out. That's their ability to look at it surgically to try to determine merit, not. I mean, you may have remembered 6 weeks, 2 months ago, a story with the Smithsonian Institute where they cut funding on a program that pulled out Enola Gay. Now, for those of you who remember World War II history, that was the name of the airplane that Captain Tibbets named after his wife. But because it had gay in it, the program flipped that, and all of a sudden, this is how they're, what do they call it? Fat waste, and it's really very harmful.
Yeah. Assemblywoman, as you begin to obviously work toward the May revise and then beyond that, your thoughts and reactions to what you're hearing, I'm sure here, but also in your own networks, about the potential reduction of federal support to the state, and obviously the implications to the state budget, and by extension, those of us that are recipients and beneficiaries of the state budget.
Yeah, so there's a lot of concern in Sacramento with what kind of hole we are anticipating, and there's so much uncertainty at this point that it's very hard to figure out, okay, where are we going to go from where we don't know where we're at? And that's difficult. And you all know that you can't make a budget when you're not being told how much to expect, especially when every day that we turn on the TV, we are being told by executive order something else is being eliminated. And so it's very hard to predict, and I know how difficult it is for our local institutions of education to also plan ahead. And so it's been just making, I think, life for all of us very difficult. I'm very concerned that the budget that the governor essentially gave us in January, it's going to look very, very different next week. And we have to prepare for the worst. But I also think that it's really telling us that we have to work in a different way. We have to look at more collaboration. We have to be innovative, and we have to really do better, given the circumstances.
Yeah. No, I think here you're seeing an example of working together and different, and for better and different outcomes that obviously advance the mission, as the Congressman said. I'm going to switch gears to something a little bit, hopefully, more promising and uplifting. And Congressman, you've been very involved in the American Dream and Promise Act and activities around pathways and protection of DACA, those that are in the DACA status. Just any thoughts that you have in terms of the possibility of some remedies or mitigations that might improve the circumstances of those young people in those categories?
Yes. We just introduced this week the bipartisan Farm Worker Modernization Act. We think that in terms of providing legal status to some of the hardest working people that you'll ever meet in your life, and like Esmeralda, my family, I'm second generation, we're immigrants. My parents, my grandparents didn't speak English when they came here. But we all know that those folks are in partnership with our agricultural community to put food on America's dinner table every night. And you talk about DACA and you talk about Dreamers. And the reason I mentioned the Farm Worker Modernization Act, because although I support, and I suspect most of you, comprehensive immigration reform, and I've supported that, and the Hispanic Caucus, of which I'm a part of, has always made that our first, second, and third priority. We've come to the conclusion, especially with this administration that is talking about mass deportation, which is horrific, that is not possible. But the president has, and this is where I think there might be an opportunity, he has talked about some sympathy toward Dreamers. If we can get this bipartisan Farm Worker Modernization Act through the House, and the president was willing to lean into it to include Dreamers, I think we could include DACA, and it would, I'm sure they would urge some additional efforts like was in the Senate bill last year on border security, hiring more folks and doing with some other efforts possibly, that we could put a bipartisan package together that would provide legal status for DACA and for Dreamer that would be included in this larger package. That's not comprehensive immigration reform, but it would attempt to deal with a significant segment of those people who do not have documentation and those families that are mixed where some have legal status and some do not. So that's what we're trying to do.
Well, that's very encouraging, Congressman. I think for this group and others that hear about it and trying to find some pathway forward, and obviously any mention of bipartisanism and support and is also very, very encouraging. So I appreciate those efforts.
Let's make it clear here. The farm worker measure has bipartisan support, and to expand this, it would take the president to say that he would like to include Dreamers and lean in on it. Because, of course, Republicans have the majority in both houses, although the number are narrow. But to get that expanded effort, it would require, in my view, for the president to say, yeah, let's do something on this and let's include Dreamers.
We will remain confident, supremely confident in your persuasive abilities. Okay, and let's move to another topic that I know very has a high priority in both of your offices and something that you've personally been involved in. I'll begin with the HR 2106, Expanding Medical Education Act, that both you and I believe Congressman Gray have been involved in. And then I'm going to pivot to the Assemblywoman and ask her a little bit of her activities to essentially help almost singularly reopen Madera and efforts both of you are making to bring medical training to rural communities. In the Assemblywoman's case, this part of rural California. In the Congressman's case, rural America. So an update on that particular bill.
Well, my friend, Chancellor, I would be remiss if I didn't say, you got great looking socks.
Hey, Congressman, I got your size.
You see Merced, I love it. For every 100,000 people we have here in the Valley, we have 47 physicians. We've been aware of our physician shortage for years. And the programs that have existed have been helpful. The efforts with University of California, San Francisco, and Community Medical Center. There's other programs that UCLA has with Sachs, Cal State Bakersfield, and those are efforts. What we're trying to do is to put a full-fledged medical school. We also have a nursing shortage, and the community colleges here play a critical role, and Fresno State, I understand, has a 2-year wait on your baccalaureate program on nursing. But we have a crisis pending facing us. So we've introduced the Expanding Medical Education Act with Congressmember Adam Gray. And then on the Senate side, we have my colleague and friend from Virginia who has his own separate legislation. And that is to provide additional funding throughout the country for areas that are underserved. And certainly the San Joaquin Valley is underserved, to either expand existing medical education or to build new medical schools. That's the purpose of the legislation, and we're working hard on that and to match the state commitment that's occurred, because we need it.
Thank you, Congressman. Of course, leadership always requires us to manage the challenges of the moment, always looking to the future. Even as you help lead efforts right now to ensure support for education and training and et cetera, you're always looking at what the country will need in the future. There was an instance where there was a very serious situation with a local medical provider in Madera that the Assemblywoman leaned into, and I happen to know a little bit about, maybe more about her individual activities to rescue that situation, and then build on it to ensure that we never have that occur in the future. And so a very medically under-resourced community, historically that's been the case. And perhaps some thoughts about what it took to reopen that, and your efforts longer term to do what the Congressman is implying in terms of ensuring that the Valley has its appropriate sort of apportionment of medical providers.
Thank you for that. So just to kind of piggyback on what the Congressman said, and obviously the statistics are really stark, I think, for our area, and so they're reminders of why it is so important that we support medical education, from the top down to even our K through 12, and starting our students early in pathways. But for me, this is my third year in the State Assembly, and one of the challenges that I faced, I think maybe less than 30 days into getting to the legislature, was that Madera Hospital closed. And I will tell you, aside from kind of the continuing the work that Congressman Costa and now Congressman Gray had been doing with UC Merced Medical School, I started thinking, oh my God, if we don't have a hospital, what does it mean if we're continuing our efforts to build a medical school for doctors to go? Where are they going to go if we don't even have a hospital? And so sure enough, the process was not easy. I am grateful to have a great partner in the Senate, Senator Caballero, and she and I teamed up to very quickly, in the first 150 days, put something through the budget and be able to allocate funding to help Madera reopen its doors, in addition to helping hospitals across the state of California, including Cahuilla Delta, which also was in jeopardy of closing. Imagine 2 hospitals in our region closing. That would have been extremely devastated. We had enough with just one. But the process has not been easy. What I've learned, there's a lot of bureaucracy and so forth. And so even after securing that $150 million, and then in turn it became $300 million of an investment from the state of California, because we knew that hospitals across California were struggling, especially in medically underserved communities. Why? Because there's a lot of poverty. Most of these patients are Medi-Cal patients, and if you didn't know, unfortunately, we don't reimburse the hospitals 100% of the cost of care for a patient that is on Medi-Cal. And so you can imagine, in a hospital like Madera, which predominantly serves Medi-Cal patients, and then on top of that, one of the issues that they were facing was that they were hiring a lot of traveler nurses. And so travelers were much more expensive, and so that really impacted their budget. And so lo and behold, we were able to secure $57 million to be able to reopen, and the doors just opened about 45 maybe days ago, which is remarkable. I don't think there's been one hospital that has actually been closed for 2+ years and actually reopened its doors. It's really, really not a typical story, and so very proud of the work, but the work is not over. I'm on the phone almost every other week, if not every week, with the hospital, ensuring that they are able to keep their doors open. And one of the things that we also have to do in combination to not just the state providing the resources that they need is that we have to think about the workforce. And so that's been another issue that as I've been in the legislature, from year one, I introduced a piece of legislation to be able to do a pilot program for community colleges to be able to issue bachelor degrees in nursing. I know there was some opposition from some of the institutions of higher learning, like state universities, and it's okay, but you know what? We have to kind of challenge each other. And these are moments that we have to think about, okay, how do we collaborate? How do we think outside the box? How do we come together? Maybe because the current way, the systems that are in place, the structures are not meeting the needs of the workforce. And I'm okay with challenging that. I'm okay with that because I think that when we continue to do the same, right, and expect different results, you guys all know that's insanity. And so I think that given the challenges that we have, we're projected a shortage of 44,000 nurses by 2030, we have to do something different. And so my piece of legislation, thank you. My piece of legislation did get to the governor's office. Unfortunately, it was vetoed, but we are doing it again. And we are, bringing partners along. I appreciate the conversations that I've had, like with Fresno State, and how we can work together with the state universities to ensure that our rural communities, also our students that live in these much more remote, that don't have, the great access to internet, actually can get their higher education in their own community. We all know that if our kids get educated and trained in those communities, the likelihood of them staying is much greater than if they go away or if they go to a private university where they're saddled in debt. And so my goal is to continue those efforts so that we're having those conversations to be able to meet the workforce needs when it comes to healthcare here in our valley through my piece of legislation, which is AB 1400. And again, it doesn't solve all, but it does help address one piece. And then also kind of along the lines with the UC Merced medical education and the future of the medical school. Also, I introduced AB 58, which would ensure that the work that folks have been working on for decades has an actual financing plan in place so that we meet the goals that we want to be able to deliver not just the medical education building, but everything else that is needed to have a standalone medical school here in the valley, which will be historic. And then beyond that, we need a UC hospital in our valley, a full-blown hospital. And so those are the efforts that I will continue to work in Sacramento.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. We have just a few more minutes, and I wanted to ask our panelists just some, I'll prompt them with the closing question, and then maybe a minute or two for questions from the audience. It's interesting, we talked about medical ed. Earlier we had a panel of students, several from Dinuba, high school students. I think all three indicated that their goal is to be a doctor. And so, yes, Dinuba, but maybe also a doctor in Fresno, Madera, Fowler, Merced, maybe, and Fireball. And so this is what we want to do, is retain that kind of talent and ambition. And so I appreciate the comments about the budget, both federally and state. How to protect our most vulnerable, the congressman, how we're thinking about caring. Everyone knows that people are drawn to communities that are dynamic, that are prospering, with strong educational apparatus, with access to medical care. And if we don't make these investments today, okay, the prosperity that is possible tomorrow will be compromised. And so, again, leadership deals with the challenges of the moment, but never takes its eye off of the future. So, what you have, as the congressman recognized, leaders in the room, how can, this is a consortium of almost 30 public and private colleges, universities, community colleges, partners, etc., representing 250,000 young people. I'll start with you, Assemblywoman. How can those in this room be a partner with you and your efforts in Sacramento?
Yeah, so one thing is staying connected. When you look at my legislative package, it comes directly from individuals from the community that bring the solution to me. At the end of the day, I'm not the expert in education. Yes, I'm a product of public education and I was part-time faculty, but that's my limited expertise. So you guys have the expertise when it comes to programs, when it comes to the California Education Code and the barriers and challenges that exist. Just to highlight one issue, I met early on last year with school board members here in Fresno County, and one of the top issues was transportation and how we are expected to transition, right? We know climate change is happening and want to reduce greenhouse gases, but a lot of our small school districts don't have the resources or infrastructure, and the technology is not there. And so we have a bill that tries to address that and gives the relief that small and rural school districts need and deserve to have from policy that we actually made that was a one-size-fits-all. And so again, you guys are that voice and that expertise, and I want to be able to hear directly from you if you have ideas and ways that we can work together, if it may be through policy or other forms of working together in terms of initiatives.
Thank you, Assemblywoman. Congressman, how can we help support your efforts?
Well, I think there are numerous avenues to do that. All of you obviously are connected and involved with your communities, and you have faculty associations, you have your statewide organizations, and those that have a presence in Washington as well. And you have to make your voices heard. We've got 5 congressional districts in this valley, and you know who your members of Congress are. I hope you do. The fact is that we're making decisions right now. If in fact, I hate to say that there's another dark cloud on the horizon, but if in this reconciliation process, if they cut $880 billion out of Medi-Cal, I just held a town hall last month on Medi-Cal Matters for an hour, from 2 in the afternoon to 3. Not the most ideal time. We had over 8,000 participants in that 1 hour. This is America's safety net for healthcare. And the ripple effect of that to our hospitals, which our hospitals here have among the highest Medi-Cal recipients in the country. Esmeralda talked a lot about the situation of the triage that we're doing with not only what happened with Madera that I was involved with, but Kauai and other hospitals in the state. But this is a snapshot of what they're looking at doing in terms of cuts that I think will have a very horrific impact on how we provide health care in America and education.
Well, we'll certainly be prepared to stand with you, Congressman. We have time for a question or two from the audience before we conclude our session. Ms. Toscano, I was talking about you from Dinuba, right? UCLA, go Bruins, right? I'm a Bruin guy, graduate también, okay. And wanted to be, right, doctor? Did I get it right? Okay, great. Yes, this young man here with raising his finger.
Thank you. I appreciate the young man portion of that. Javier Martinez, and I am the proud principal at Eagle High School. Congressman, you've been there a few times, and I appreciate that. In terms of educating our students and creating this pathway and creating dreams for them, I currently have 2 students, one of them who has attended UCLA. He is currently ready to become a surgeon. Which is actually along your way, what you want to study. One of the things that I hear a lot is the challenges of not only finishing medical school. I have another young girl that just finished UCLA. It is in the medical school of medicine. Same challenges come when it comes down to rural communities, and then it's bringing them back. it is one way to try to make them go to that level, and it is another one to try to bring them back, because all of the different constraints that are happening not only within the state but in our rural communities that we hope that they come and serve. What might be some of the things that you guys are thinking about in bringing back this type of students, this quality professionals to give back to their communities?
Couple ideas. One is there's legislation that exists that if graduate students who've completed their medical education locate in an area that's underserved for a time specific, and there's different pieces of legislation, that the federal government would assist in repaying a portion of their medical education as an incentive to get them. Yeah, that's a good idea, don't you think? Because it's so expensive, as we know, to the 11 years it takes to become a physician. Secondly, we just mentioned it here in our efforts with the effort to put a full-fledged medical school here with the partnership of UC Merced with the new medical science building that's going up, and UCSF, which is one of the premier medical schools in the country, which makes it the world. That partnership with the residency program that we have here at Fresno, we think is a model for a full-fledged medical school. That residency program that existed now for 50 years, almost half the students that have completed that residency program have stayed to practice here in the Valley. We think when you have the facility here in the area, it's much more likely that folks are going to stay here and practice.
Thank you, Congressman. Final thoughts, and then we're moving on to the next panel.
Yeah, I just want to echo the short term. I think we got to do more of what the congressman just mentioned, these forgivable loans, because we know these students are saddled with significant debt when they graduate from medical school. But I think long term, the medical school here in the Valley is really going to be transformational, because again, if you educate and train the kids here, the likelihood of them staying is here, and we already seen it. 2 cohorts, bachelor degrees that were accepted to UC Merced, 100% all from the Valley. That's 24 students that will be accepted into the medical school, and the likelihood of them staying here is very high, and so I'm super excited about that.
Well, we're going to end on that very, very high note of a independently accredited medical school at UC Merced with an accompanying hospital.
Yes.
Okay. On that, please help me to thank our panelists.
Well, let me thank you, Chancellor Muñoz, for all your good work. Ben Durant, my buddy, and all of you who every day make a difference in educating America's future. Thank you, and thank you.